for joining us for this recording all about birding the border.
We're going to run through each of the different trips, sort of give you all an idea of what the schedule is going to be, so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect. Emily's going to talk to us about each of the trips, and then Brian is going to basically talk to us about what birds, since he is our birding guide, he is going to talk to us about what birds we can see on the trip. But so first off, let me actually, there we go. Okay. So birding the border, Emily. So what is birding the border in a nutshell?
So Birding the Border is our feature program, and one of our goals with Birding with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service is to share private and restricted access properties with birders. Since Texas is 98% privately owned, some of those places that we want to go birding are a little bit unreachable or illegal to access. And so we're excited to kind of bridge that gap. Being with the Extension Service, we work with our landowners frequently throughout the year about stewardship and conservation, and the mesh between stewardship and working lands in our agricultural industry. So we have great relationship with our landowners, and we're excited to share that with you. So Birding the Border is hosted out of Del Rio, Texas. That's May 2nd through the 5th. 2024. So typically we're about the first weekend of May. If you can't join us this year and are thinking about a future trip, typically about that first weekend of May. So we have some super unique opportunities to see private lands, like I said, and we're going to share you about that. Birding the Border has a lot of different meetings. I think we are obviously on the border of Texas and Mexico, which is where young, naive Emily Grant came up with the name Birding the Border because it sounded cool. But now it just means so much more as I have grown to learn the area as a birder. And we really coincide in those three different ecoregions. We get to bird in all three of them, which offers a tremendous amount of diversity of species and habitat. And Brian, you can nerd out on my moment there, but it's just a unique place to be birding.
Yeah, so the three ecoregions that Birding the Border sits on is, so you have the South Texas brush meets the Texas Hill Country, meets sort of the very introduction to the Trans-Pecos ecoregion, and they're all within like about a 30-minute drive. So it's super, super cool. But Brian, you can nerd out if you would like.
Yeah, sure. So just like you were saying, these ecoregions kind of come together here, which leads to really great diversity. And like Emily said, we're timing this with the peak of migration. So we're going to try to get as many species as possible. And you just never know. It's kind of one of those times where you never know what you're going to see every day out in the field. So it's a super exciting time to be there. And we visit a lot of really great habitats within those ecoregions. So we're in, kind of open grassy areas, brushy areas, riparian, gallery forest type things. So yeah, it's just, I feel really lucky to have grown up in such a ecologically rich place. And yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. We could talk forever about it, to be perfectly honest, but we're trying to stick to a fairly strict timeline. So so that's just kind of an introduction into what Birding the Border is as a program. So if you do attend Birding the Border, each day we're going to have a schedule. So Emily, slide pretty well speaks for itself, but if you kind of want to run us through just real quick, like what you can expect the day that you arrive, which will be Thursday, and then we'll sort of walk through each day for birding and what you can kind of roughly expect.
Absolutely. So this will be short and sweet, as most of y'all can read. On Thursday, we welcome y'all, and we have bird check-in from 3 to 6. We have a beginner tracked meeting from 5 to 5:30, which we'll talk a little bit about what that beginner track looks like here in a little bit. And then we, in the evening at 6:30 is with a welcome social. So we taco about extension, which means we have a wonderful taco bar and enjoy the evening. Meeting our guides and fellow birders that we're going to be going out with on Friday. So each trip, depending upon how far they are, has a different departing time. So vans will leave from 5 to 6:30 a.m. Once you return, you'll return about 2-ish We don't have a hard set schedule because the birds might be great, or it may be getting hot and the birds not be great. And you want to come back early, we completely understand. We do that with the group. From 2:30 to 4:30 in the air conditioning, we offer birding with extension educational activities. On Friday, we have a unique experience called Birds, Bats, and Owls Benefit Dinner. And that goes to support our youth programs. And we'll share the coolness of that here in a little bit. And then Friday evening, if you're not out on the Birds, Bats, and Owls Benefit Dinner, you're welcome to join us for the Tweets and Treats social back there at home base, which we're going to be at Enchanted Garden this year. So we have an evening with supper and all theming around our feature bird this year, which is the black cap vireo. So that's Thursday and Friday. And we'll click over to Saturday. What you'll see is very similar. We'll have the vans departing for trips from 2:30 to 4:30 back to those educational activities. And at 6:30, we have our birding with extension dinner. And our keynote speaker is Miss Katie Hoskins, who's our photography track guide. And I'm so excited to hear about Katie talk. She's going to be talking about ranching is for the birds. And her family are actively involved in land stewardship and managing their property for both agricultural and wildlife activities. And she's an active birder and wildlife photographer. So she's going to talk about how they work on their operation to make everything ag and bird friendly. So I'm excited to share her story.
This is a topic that is very near and dear to Emily's heart. If any of y'all know Emily, she loves this. She's very excited.
I've searched for years for this keynote speaker. So I'm thrilled to be able to share Ms. Hoskins. So Sunday, again, it's a little bit of an abbreviated day because we want to get you on your way and back home if you are traveling. Because if anyone knows, Del Rio is kind of in the middle of nowhere. There is a town once you get there, but kind of in the middle of nowhere. So all of our trips will return by 2 on Sunday, and then we will have you on your way. Now, if you decide that y'all are having a great day birding and everybody in the group wants to stay a few more minutes and you're back a little bit late, I'll tolerate that, but we want to make sure you have the best experience.
Yes. Okay, so run through the schedule. So let's talk about our first trip. So not the first trip, but one of our trips is Below the Dam. So Below the Dam is a Friday trip. Your guide, if you decide to go to Below the Dam, is Brandon Nooner. So Emily, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to let you tell us all about the Below the Dam trip.
So Below the Dam is an interesting area. It is actually part of the Amistad National Recreation Area, but it is closed to the public. So what you see in that bottom picture is the dam side, the river side of the lake Amistad, where the Pecos, Devils, and Rio Grande converge to make a lake. And so where we were standing to take that picture is below the dam on the Rio Grande River as it flows further south. So that is a restricted access area. So as you're walking the trail that you see in that picture, you are on the United States side and you can see Mexico right across the river. So it's a really unique opportunity to bird right there on the border.
Literally
in a place that is restricted access and not open to the public. And actually, I believe I can say with some certainty, other than birding the border, there has not been another birding group down there in at least the last 8 years. So we're one of the only trips that gets to go below the dam currently at Lake Amistad. So it's special because you can't get there.
Yes. Okay. So Emily told us about the trip. Now we're going to turn it over to Brian. He's going to tell us about the birds, which is what y'all are here to hear about. So Brian, if you go to Below the Dam, what can they expect to see?
So this is a great spot because you're at the edge of a couple of different habitats. So kind of above, so you're kind of walking along these bluffs along the river. And above the bluffs is this kind of scrubby Chihuahuan desert kind of thorn scrub. And then along the river, you have this really rich riparian area with, great big mesquite trees and things. And you've got cane along the river. So a lot of different habitats all kind of close in one small area. And then you've got the water, of course, and there's this kind of big still area near the dam. So one of the things we look for are any lingering waterfowl that may be hanging out. And this one here is a Mexican duck, which is kind of a Southwest specialty species. Along the cliffs, we have a great little colony of cliff swallows nesting there, and as well as a great blue heron rookery, which are both pretty cool to see.
And the rookery is on the Mexico side, which is really neat.
That's right. Yeah, across the river. And that's kind of cool if you want to keep a list for your US and your Mexico side, you can do that. And then in the scrub, we have, some of our more common Southwest breeding species like this Bell's Vireo, but also painted buntings, yellow-breasted chats. I think last year they had about 80 species on this trip.
I think they hit our high. I think like they blew it out of the water. Like it was, Brandon has set the bar high for himself this year. Very, very high.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those places you never know what you're going to see. We've had Franklin's gulls migrating through there before. It's a really cool spot. Definitely worth checking out while you can.
Okay, so our next trip is Baker's Crossing. So Emily, so let me tell you some information first. So Baker's Crossing is a Sunday trip that we have. And the guide for that is going to be David Tonneson. So Emily, what can you tell us about Baker's Crossing?
I'm going to turn this one over to Brian a little bit because he has been the guide the past 2 years, and this is one of our underbirded trips, and I think it's such a shame. This is such a unique opportunity to be along the Devil's River in a much different habitat than on our Devil's River trip. And we are on private lands here. So we are actually on a privately owned ranch. So you're not standing on the road birding at Baker's Crossing like the eBird. Brian, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So this is a place I've had, great experiences with since I was a kid birding in the region. And like Emily said, it's kind of it's more, great big sycamores and pecans and huge oak trees right along the river. And it's really lush in there, but you're right on the edge of that scrub again. This is a great place recently for white-tipped dove, which is a species expanding into the region in recent years. Also a great place to see, kingfishers, things like that. But it's a really wide spot in the river. The water's moving really slowly, so you also have a good chance for some waterfowl that may be hanging out, or some of those kind of marsh species like marsh wrens. We've had a good number of those last time we were there, which is pretty late for them. And this is a spot where we get where we had our only, I think, pure northern parula last year, which this region is an overlap zone for the tropical and northern parulas. So we look for both of those species and their hybrids. So anyway, really cool spot with pretty great diversity. And yeah, I'm not sure why it's so underbirded. It's got so much potential.
It's literally like driving up to Baker's Crossing. It's such like a little oasis. Like you're driving, you're like, what have I got myself into? And then you actually get there and you're like, holy cow, like it's beautiful there. It really is.
Yeah, it really has that like oasis feeling.
Yes, very much so. So, okay. So the next trip we have is our Big Day Del Rio. So oh my gosh, that's such a tongue twister for me today, apparently. So Big Day Del Rio, that is a Saturday trip. And just like Below the Dam, Brandon Nooner is going to be guiding that. He's kind of like our Brian, we keep stealing this title from you because you're really kind of our local guide, but Brandon actually like lives in Del Rio. So he's like our newest local guide, I guess. But Emily, so what is Big Day Del Rio for people that don't know what a big day is, maybe?
Absolutely. So Big Day Del Rio, we are targeting, highlighting all the uniqueness of Del Rio. And so what you see here is so Big Day, the goal is to get as many species as we can in the different areas of Del Rio in one day. So you're going to be pushing it with Brandon. He's got some goals and he's kind of set some guidelines for himself. And Brandon actually lives now in Del Rio. and is actually the top e-birder, and did a big year Val Verde County. So he is vastly explored the area trying to get his big year. So Del Rio is a unique spot. And what you see in these pictures is called San Felipe Creek, which is a spring-fed creek system that feeds the agricultural irrigation districts throughout the South Del Rio area. So you have this gorgeous San Felipe Creek system. You have Lake Amistad. You have part of the Del Rio area we call the Vega Verde Road, which is right along the Rio Grande River. You've got the hidden treasures around Laughlin Air Force Base that Brandon has found. So Brandon and his family have worked tirelessly. Brandon and his wife both are birders, and they are both very active in the Val Verde County area. So he's excited to highlight all that Del Rio offers for us, the birders.
Yeah, so I know, Emily, I was surprised you didn't hit on what we're going to see on Vega Verde Road. So
I was leaving that up to the
Brandon. So I was going to say, so Brian, what could we possibly see in Del Rio? And what's the big one that we were hoping, fingers crossed, we get to see?
All right. So yeah, the cool thing about this one is, we're, hosting this event in Del Rio, and a lot of our sites are kind of outside of Del Rio. And there's so much great birding right there in the city. So it's a great opportunity to explore those little local sites with somebody who knows them extremely well. And yes, that one species that everybody wants to see is the Morlet's seed eater, that bird on the bottom right. In the United States, they are only found along the Rio Grande River from Del Rio down to around Falcon Reservoir. So it's a really specialized range restricted species in the US. So it's definitely a highlight bird if you get to see it. But we're also looking for things along the creek like yellow-crowned night herons and great kiskadees. And there's also there are lots of little treasure populations out there too, like these Mississippi kites that are nesting in town in Del Rio, which is like this little isolated population. Sometimes there's gray hawks breeding in the city. So yeah, really great opportunity to bird some really awesome hotspots.
Yes, quite a diversity of birds in such a small area. So don't underestimate this trip. So our next trip is the Devil's River State Natural Area. And so Emily, I'm gonna let you break this down because we've split this trip this year. So so Devil's River, so we have, how do we want to do this?
We have the Devil. I got this. I got you.
Go for it.
So we have the Devil's River State Natural Area, and this has been a key trip on our Birding the Border program. And as y'all can see there in that bottom picture, the Devil's River State Natural Area that most know about is right there along the river, and their Dolan Falls is just a short way down, and that is the North Unit. And so we get the opportunity to walk across the river and see Dolan Falls, bird along the Devils. And the unique thing about the natural area, if you've ever been, there's a gate and you have to walk a very long way to the river. We luckily get to drive past the gate. So we don't do all that walking. And then there's some private access places on the Devil's River State Natural Area in the North Division that we are able to see and take y'all to. So we go to the North Unit on Friday and Saturday. So this is a unique trip as it is all day and it's extended because of that opportunity to go on to Dolan Falls, which is owned by the Nature Conservancy and is closed to the public pretty harshly. We are one of the few groups that get to see that every year. So pretty harshly closed to the public. So we're excited to share that with you. We do on those trips have to walk across the river. There's no easy way to drive to get you across the river to walk down to Dolan Falls. It's usually about calf high. And so we walk across the river there and then go on down and see Dolan Falls. So done that several years and nobody's washed down river yet. But we haven't had enough rain for that to happen anyways. So, but that's a unique experience in Texas. If you have never seen Dolan Falls, the only way to access that right now is via kayak. So if you're a kayaker, you can see it. If you are not, you need to come with us. So the unique thing about that is it's an extended trip. So you will not get back till 4 in the afternoon-ish. So that's a long day. you'll leave at 5:30 and you won't return till 4. So make that an extended trip. The cool thing about the Devils River State Natural Area is there is now a secondary unit called the Dan A. Hughes unit, which is the South Division. This is the first. It is not open to the public. They are hopeful that at some point they will be, but they are not currently. And so we are excited to share that the South unit is going to host Birding the Border on our Sunday trip. So this will be the first ever birding group that's publicly been able to go out there and bird. So we're excited to share that experience. So lots of diverse habitat. The river's great. Diversity amongst habitat between the 2 units is unique. It's not the same, which kind of surprised me, but really neat trip. We're excited to show you those behind the scenes access places that you can't go if you just go on a normal day pass.
Yeah. So Brian, what can we see at the Devils?
So this is one of those like super rich places. The Devil's River is the gold standard for water quality in Texas. It's just so lush, so pristine. And so from the scrub to, these patches of juniper to, the sycamores along the river, there's so much cool stuff to find. We usually find zone-tailed hawks here, often on a nest. Along the river, you have a chance for all 3 species of kingfisher, ringed, green, and belted. Then you have these eastern species reaching the western limits of their breeding range, like yellow-throated warblers and eastern wood pewees. And then you have western species reaching their eastern extreme as well, like varied buntings, and gray vireo is possible out there. And then along the cliffs and bluffs, you've got rock wrens and canyon wrens, and it's just such a cool blending of species and really, really, beautiful landscape that you're in the whole time.
Yes, very.
But you get to drive in the whole time. That's the key.
It is.
We go past the gate, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next trip is Dobbs Run Ranch. So Dobbs Run Ranch is part of our beginner track, which we'll cover. But it is our Friday trip, and the guide for that trip is going to be Stephen. So Emily, give us the 411 on Dobbs Run.
So Dobbs Run Ranch is one of those really unique places that we offer one day as our participants are going to be headed out in ATVs to explore the ranch. It's a large ranch. There's a lot to cover, but this is what I called our Golden Cheek hub. It has always reliably nested and been easy to find at Birding the Border. And so we are excited that Dobbs Run has done such an amazing job at managing their property, specifically to support the golden cheek warbler habitat out there. So one of our great birding buddies and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension supporters actually helps them manage their property to look for those old world cedars that really help foster that habitat there for them. So lots of unique things. This is way more kind of hill country north out of Del Rio for us. So you're getting into kind of a higher elevation. As you can see, we're kind of up. It's an exciting and very different property than some of the other ones.
Yes. Yeah. So, Emily kind of touched on it a little bit with Golden Cheek, but other than Golden Cheeks, what else can we see at Dobbs Run?
So you're in that classic Texas hill country, rolling hills with, ash juniper, pinon. So you're getting, golden cheek warblers, you're getting Hutton's vireos, good chance for Woodhouse's scrub jays. We've got vermilion flycatchers that are usually there by the pond, and another chance for gray vireo, which is one of our more difficult little specialty species in the area. You might hear Scott's oriole singing. You've got hooded orioles also. Great spot for painted buntings. Lots of really awesome species and just really, really gorgeous habitat. It's one of those, the hill country is beautiful, but this spot is pretty exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I hate to take over the lead guide duties here, but last year at Birding the Border, we were able to get our lifer Montezuma as Birding with Extension here on the Dobbs Run Ranch. So I'm not sure if it's still there, but it was last year.
I was gonna say, if you didn't say it, I was gonna say it. But you stole my thunder, and that's okay. Okay, so next one we're gonna do is Fort Clark Springs, and this is one that's very near and dear to Brian's heart, hence why he is guiding this trip. This is a Friday trip, so I mean, do we want to let Brian talk about it, or Emily, do you want to
let Brian take it?
Brian, go for it. Take it away.
Okay, so Fort Clark Springs, this is where I grew up birding. So in the surrounding areas around Bracketville, which is kind of where Fort Clark sits, it's this expansive Tamaulipan thorn scrub, the scrubby stuff. There may be a mesquite tree here or there, but pretty dry. But Fort Clark is this oasis in that, where Las Morris Springs comes up and feeds into Las Morris Creek, which eventually drains out into the Rio Grande. So you have this really lush riparian corridor with great, huge, ancient live oak trees, pecan trees, and you've got that border with that scrub. Again, you got water if there's rain and if there's water in the groundwater. It's getting drier and drier every year, unfortunately. But just a super rich place to bird. It's also, as I was mentioning, that sort of oasis, as migratory birds are flying over this scrub, they see that patch of green below them and think, that's a great place. So I'm going to stop in there. There's going to be lots of resources there. There's going to be water. So it's kind of a migrant trap in that way. And so timing this with migration, we have a good chance to pick up some interesting stuff. So some of the key birds that we would be looking for are some of those South Texas specialty species that we think of when we think of the lower Rio Grande Valley. So like green jay, olive sparrow, long-billed thrasher, but also some of those eastern breeding species like this yellow-throated vireo here, again, eastern wood pewee, barred owl, sort of reaching its western limit in this part of its range. Indigo bunting and painted bunting. Painted bunting was my spark bird. So they're, it's a great place for them. So it's, lots of diversity here and always a really, special place to get to visit.
Okay, so we're trying to keep this to like a half hour talk about these trips. So we're gonna speed it up a little bit. So next trip that we have is Las Ciénegas. So Emily, what is Las Ciénegas? Where is it?
Las Ciénegas is in the heart of the city of Del Rio, which is kind of an interesting place for you say, Emily, to put a birding tour. But so this is also the eBird hotspot called the Duck Pond, and is well known by many Del Rio locals. But the interesting thing is the Las Ciénegas is a privately owned ranch right in the middle of Del Rio. And it is connected by a series of springs and irrigation ditches and ponds. And so it's this almost like marshy wetlands area all through the back of this property and then into some pasture land and some open fields. And it's just this diversity of habitat right in the middle of the city. And it is exceptional. We cannot wait for the treasures that everybody finds here. And I'm waiting for the day that we get like the mega rarity, because I just feel like this is the place that's going to be. So Brian, take it away on the birds.
Yeah, exactly what Emily just said. This is the place where there's going to be the next bare-throated tiger heron or the next blue bunting or something. This is just like that kind of habitat. It looks so good for some interesting, exciting stuff. But some of our more expected species to find there, great place to find yellow-breasted chats. On the water, we look for, again, any lingering waterfowl, but also the resident black-bellied whistling ducks are always entertaining there. Back in the back part of the property, we get into some nice big mulberries and elms and little woodland back there where we can find long-billed thrashers. And then on the ponds, we also look for wading birds like this green heron. It's a good place for common gallinule, which is a really difficult species actually in the area, except for kind of this one little population here. So yeah, it's just lots of potential, lots of great birds, regardless though.
Yes, I did forget to mention, so Las Ciénegas is a Sunday trip, and this trip is going to be guided by David Tonneson. So the next trip that we have, which is a new one that we're very excited to talk about, is Laughlin Air Force Base. So Emily, tell everyone, some of y'all may have heard about it, but go for it.
We haven't screamed this from the rooftops, that we have access to behind the gates at Laughlin Air Force Base, partly because we don't necessarily want to publicize that the public gets to go on to an Air Force base and someone think that that's a bad idea. So we get to go. It's all approved and everything. I don't want to alarm anyone, but it's not something necessarily that we roll a flag up on and say, hey, everybody, we can get in the Air Force Base. So we're excited to share this trip with our birding friends that we have behind the gate access to Laughlin Air Force Base. So like we talked about, local guide Brandon Nooner is actually working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. No.
Yes.
USDA as part of as the BASH program coordinator there on base. And so he's done his big year. He has found a tremendous amount of county first, eBird records. The list goes on and on Laughlin Air Force Base. And so that's a part of Del Rio and Valverde County that has never, ever been birded, because other than training pilots who are busy training, not a lot of people have access to the base. And so we're excited to go with Brandon and get to bird once in a lifetime opportunity here. We're hopeful we'll be able to offer this in future years, but it's a special privilege for sure this year, and we hope that this gets to continue, but there are no guarantees, everyone. I just want to kind of point that out. New wing commander, new rules, and we might not be allowed on. So this year we are allowed on. We're taking the van through the gate. We're excited to see all that Brandon shares with us. We've never birded it. Brian, what can people expect?
Well, it would be a lot easier to answer that if I had ever been on it to bird.
And so, you still aren't going to get to go because you have to work. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, but from what I understand, it's going to be, there are some wetlands you may be able to visit. So you may be able to find some waterfowl there, some water loving species. There's more wooded areas, but also I do know that there's quite a bit of open country there. So I picked a few highlights from that particular habitat, like our breeding Swainson's hawks and Casson sparrows, and a really charismatic one that's super common in the area, but everybody loves them, scissor-tailed flycatchers. And it's probably a really great place also to find northern bobwhites. But yeah, this is one I am super jealous of anyone who gets the opportunity to go out there. Brandon has found things like northern jacana, long-tailed duck, short-eared owls, like crazy stuff. So yeah, really cool spot.
Sorry, Brian, maybe next year. Maybe.
We'll see.
So second to last trip we're going to talk about is McKenna Ranch. So McKenna Ranch is going to be a Saturday trip, and I feel like I'm saying David's name a lot. He's not guiding that much, but David is going to be the guide for this trip.
So McKenna Ranch is a privately owned ranch north of Del Rio. So it's up towards the Devil River entrance where you would go back to go to the Devil's River. But it's right there along, it's further inland away from the river. So it's kind of a really good mix of habitats. We've got some more of those large oak trees. We've got some open areas. So this is a private ranch run by Miss Mueller. Large oak trees, supplemental water managed by Miss Mueller, right at the western edge of the hill country, but not super far from the Devil's River. Brian, want to talk about this one? What birds can we expect?
So one of the ones that we really want to see at some point during Birding the Border is our feature bird, the black-capped vireo. And this is a really great place to do that. I know in past years, Laura Keene even found a nest out there during one of the photography tours. So yeah, really great spot for them. You also get some of those western scrubby breeding species like black-throated sparrows, Paraloxia is possible out there. A great place to see blue grosbeak. And then often right around sort of the main buildings area, there's some fun breeding birds like hooded orioles are always kind of trying to nest underneath the eaves. A pair of canyon wrens there usually. Great place for couches and western kingbirds. So yeah, lots of cool species out there.
Okay, so our very last trip is Zuberbuehler Ranch. So Zuberbuehler Ranch is a Saturday trip, and that is going to be guided by Stephen.
So Zuberbuehler Ranch is a working ranch. They raise Rambouillet sheep for wool and Angora goats for mohair. And so the Zuberbuehler family is a unique trip for me. This is a family I've known closely through my years working as an extension agent. And they really open their gates to provide a unique experience. So guests, while you get to bird, they will be feeding you lunch, a home cooked meal in the old shearing barn there on the ranch. This is actually one of the ranches that first brought over Rambouillet sheep from Mexico. So the family actually felts, uses that wool to felt bird figurines, and really has some unique touches as they welcome you on their ranch. So it's gorgeous. It's big. It's our furthest west trip. So really more of that desert scrub type habitat. And they work on feeding. They have a water source there around the main ranch when it rains. And they work on providing some supplementary food sources to kind of help the birders get a great look there around the barns when y'all are eating lunch.
Yes. So Brian, so what can we see at Zuberbuehler?
Yeah, so in that really arid, scrubby habitat, you find species that are more acclimated to that. So, like for example, the cactus wren on the bottom left there, and the pyraloxia on the bottom right. Those are sort of those desert species. You also look for black-throated sparrows out there. Previously, this was our really great spot for a black-tailed gnatcatcher, which kind of disappeared from the region after that hard freeze in 2021, I believe it was. So anyway, we're kind of waiting for their return to the area. I just had one actually down in Valverde County this Christmas. So that was great to see. That was up north of Langtree. So they're kind of making their way back. So we're going to be looking for that there. But it's also a great place to pick up some migrating species through the area, like this yellow-headed blackbird and clay-colored sparrow. We usually have a good number of them out there. Sparrow species in general, good place for them. Vermilion flycatcher, usually there's a pair over there around the pond. So it's a really cool spot. It's very different. You're really truly into that Chihuahuan desert habitat. Yeah.
Yes. So, so Emily, tell us a little bit about so we talked a little bit about, we have a couple different tracks. So you can either do the route of picking your own trips, or you can do our beginner or our photography track. So you want to give us a little bit of rundown of registration, pricing, all that jazz?
Absolutely. So we have a beginner track, and so that's kind of where we have laid out. If you're a beginner birder or new to the region, or maybe want a kind of a slower paced trip, we have 3 spots left on that track, and that's going to include the Zuberbuehler Ranch, so far out west, Las Ciénegas, really that oasis in the heart of Del Rio to catch some of those migratory rare species. And then we want to get you to Dobbs Run Ranch. That experience on those ATVs, getting the golden cheek, checking off all of those boxes, and getting the black cap vireo out there. So our beginner tract is $450, and that's total tactile license out the door. I say that, but I mean, there's those that 3, is, no registration pack, no registration pass to go with that. We have 1 spot left on the photography tract. So when we made the photography tract, we wanted a good mix of field and blind photography. So McKenna Ranch, Miss Mueller will fix you a home cooked meal out there on the McKenna Ranch. You walk along kind of winding road out in the middle of that property. And so we're really focusing on field photography there on some of those kind of hill country type birds. And then we go to the Transition Ranch, which is in Uvalde, which we didn't talk about as a trip because it's only featured on our photography track. And that is a bird photography ranch that has blinds and water featured set up. So you will be in the blinds during that trip and really focusing on getting those birds coming in and getting a really close view and great pictures. And then our last trip is kind of a mix of both worlds and get you up to make sure we get that golden cheek and black cat vireo up in the Kickapoo Cavern State Park area. So again, that's not a trip that everybody goes on, just on our photography track, but it's across the road from Dobbs Run Ranch. And so it kind of gives you the same kind of habitat with a little bit more diversity, a little bit different kind of experience on Kickapoo. So our photography track, which is led by Katie Hoskins, who is our keynote speaker and also on the presentation today. So she could answer hopefully if she's still on, she can maybe answer some of those questions. And that track is $475.
So Emily, go ahead.
Oh,
I was gonna transition. You started with Kickapoo, so I was like, so Kickapoo is not one of those trips that you can go on unless you're on the photography track or you decide to be part of our Birds, Bats, and Owls dinner. So, oh, there's some of it too. So yes. So, I mean, do you want to go with Birds, Bats, and Owls, or do you want me to take over?
I got it. So Birds, Bats, and Owls is a unique experience on Friday evening. So we will take you out to Kickapoo Caverns to experience the bat flight at Stewart Bat Cave. So this is if you've never experienced bat coming out of a cave, you got to put this on your list. So exciting there. So we feed you a wonderful catered meal in the field. There's like real plates and napkins, the whole 9 yards. We're not going to give you a box dinner out there. So get to experience the bat cave, usually all to ourselves. Very rarely do we have anyone join us out there. And it may be even closed on Friday. I have to double check their schedule. And then the unique part about Birds, Bats, and Owls is we also get the opportunity to hopefully see the elf owl. So 5 years in running, he hasn't skunked us yet. So we've been excited to share the elf owls and the variety of owls there at Kickapoo Caverns with our participants. So pretty neat experience, evening kind of trip. I would suggest it's it's a real tight turnaround if you go on the Devil's River trip that morning and then try to go to Birds, Bats, and Owls, or you want to like wake up and go the next morning to the Devil's River. You're going to have to be dedicated. It can be done. We've done it multiple times, but Birds, Bats, and Owls does kind of make for a late evening night. So
yes, it does. So Brian, I guess while we're watching, Brian just took this video. It's an amazing video. What else can we see? What other birds might we be able to expect for Birds, Bats, and Owls?
Yeah, so when all of these millions of Mexican free-tailed bats are emerging from the cave, it's a really cool opportunity to see raptors coming in to feed on this sort of easy last-minute meal of the day. So there's a variety of species that are possible coming in to feed on the bats. This one in this video is a red-tailed hawk, but we've also seen Cooper's hawk, sharp-shinned hawk, zone-tailed hawk, Swainson's hawk, Merlin, peregrine falcon, all sorts of things might be possible coming in to feed on these bats. And yeah, it's just a really one of those like nature spectacles, it's pretty amazing to see.
And I realize this is all about the birds, but you do also get mammals that'll come in and they'll hang by their back feet, or if they don't have feet, they just hang there and they'll catch the bats coming out of the cave. It's one of my favorite experiences that we have to offer. But that's really all that we have in regards to all of our trips. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Wait, flip back to the registration. You cut me off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now, so extra things you can purchase as part of Birding the Border is Birds, Bats, and Owls Pass, Birding the Border t-shirt, and Spouse of Birders Pass. So that allows them to come to all the socials, but maybe they're not a birder. So they get to come hang out, but not go out on the trips. If you want to put together your own list of trips like we did and we kind of talked about throughout the presentation, regular registration is $65 registration pass, and then each trip has a different fee based upon how we compensate some of those landowners and the opportunities that we have. So we we're kind of a whole full circle model. We give our access, we create those connections with those landowners, but in turn, we help them foster an economic impact on their property. So they all charge a small, very nominal fee, but that way we can provide them resources to continue to improve the songbird habitat on their property and manage their agricultural practices with that stewardship and conservation in mind. So a full circle kind of thing. So we give back. So each trip has a different cost that you add to that $65 registration pass. So again, all of those registrations include access to the socials and the educational activities each evening. So and the birding with extension dinner on Saturday night.
Yes, I was
now
just
you can wrap me up.
I'm sorry, I was too excited to talk about birds, bats, and owls. Sorry. But yeah, so that's really all we have in regards to speaking about our different trips. So at this point in time, we'll be happy to take any questions that y'all have in regards to the different trips, what you might see, how registration's gonna go. So Emily, you wanna just, if they want to unmute their mic, you can. If you want to put it in the chat, you're more than welcome, whatever you are most comfortable with. I know we have a couple of questions here in the chat. So, so Pat was wondering about lodging.
So there's multiple locations in Del Rio that you can choose for lodging. I will give you my recommendations, and you can. We don't promote a specific hotel. I would recommend the Ramada, the Holiday Inn Express, the Hampton Inn, and there's also a new La Quinta. And so all of those hotels are on the western side of town, closest to our event center. So that's where I would recommend, but there's also lots of RV parks in the area. So if you drive your RV down, we can recommend an RV lodging as well. The dates are May 2nd through the 4th. So
the 5th.
Well,
the 5th.
Through the 5th. You welcome, come in on Thursday, and we conclude on Sunday. That doesn't mean you have to come all those dates. If you just want, if one trip really sparked your interest, or one or two, and you want to only come Friday or Saturday and Sunday, you're more than welcome to just do 2 trips or 3 trips, depending upon how you choose to put together your agenda. Oh, you've got to have more questions. We didn't do that good. I hopped on late. Will this recording be available? Absolutely. We will post. We'll send a link out to the recording to all the emails who registered tonight. And then we will also post on our YouTube channel for anyone who'd like to watch. How much walking or climbing is involved? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And it's different based upon the different trips available. So on our Birding the Border website, you will find the tour locations. Ooh, come on, you can do it, internet. So each tour location talks about kind of the walking. We'll give a brief snapshot, and then we kind of talk about how long the drive is, how much walking you have to do. And we really try to share how much, like, kind of walking, what that walking terrain looks like. So also neat thing is we do have the previous eBird checklist located on each of those sites, so you can kind of go back and look at each of those. So like McKenna Ranch, you're walking on a road or trail. So and a mile or 2 walk, but on a kind of a ranch road. So I would say our harshest walks are probably the Devil's River, and maybe Dobbs. We walk on some river walk that's kind of uneven sometimes and can be uncomfortable, but we take you around in ATVs there, so you don't have to do too much walking. We always will have the Devil's Zuberbeeler and Los Ciennegas, we offer hay rides to go from spot to spot to spot. So we reduce the amount of walking there for y'all. So we try to keep that in mind, but there is some.
Okay, let me get my.
I'd also say Fort Clark has quite a bit of walking.
It's pretty even terrain walking. It's just a lot of walking. I would say most of our trips, like Emily said, most of our trips are pretty even terrain walking. And if y'all have questions, you want a little bit more details as to the exact terrain, like it says 2+ miles, but you want some more detail, you can always reach out to Emily or I. We'll put our contact info in the chat so y'all can reach out to us with any questions that you have. So let's see, Cynthia.
We had a few last minute cancellations, Cynthia. I have just reposted those last 3 spots. Those were canceled yesterday, and you're right. I forgot to put them back in. So I just updated that, our last 3 spots for the beginner track.
I was going to say, so Cynthia, okay, there, I knew there was somebody that was interested and we were closed and I couldn't remember who it was. So if that's you, Cynthia, I'm glad we were able to get you to come if you're still available. So, I think I'm saying this right, is Daria. So she's asking how many people on each trip?
So we have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 13 for all the trips, but some trips we limit those numbers even further. So Dobbs Run, that's limited at 8. Believe we're limiting the Devil's River trips to about 10 this year. So no more than 13 on any trip. Our photography track is limited at 8. And our beginner track is limited at 10. So really try to keep those small groups. Some of those closer distance trips, we will go ahead and put 13, but no more than 13, no fewer than 6. Recommended attire and what is the bathroom situation? So recommended attire, I'm going to let Brian, the birder, take this one because nobody wants me to give attire tips out birding, but the bathroom situation is located on each one of those trips. Some of those are the green rooms. Some of those we have restrooms. Some of those we kind of are like, here's the restroom stop. We're going to go out birding. We do always provide toilet paper on all of our trips, no matter what type of restroom you have to utilize. Brian, you want to talk about attire?
Yeah, and to that, if you have like specific questions, if there's a specific trip that you're interested in and you want to know the specific bathroom situation, I'm sure we could answer that for you. Like I know Baker's Crossing, it's the bush, but so it just depends. Yeah, attire wise, so it's going to be pretty warm, so you'll want to have something breathable, but there is pretty high chance to pick that we're going to be going through ticks, chiggers, mosquitoes, that sort of stuff. Is something to be thoughtful about. I always recommend closed-toed shoes. So breathable fabric, but long pants generally advised, long sleeves if you want to protect yourself from the sun and the insects. But yeah, pack for the warm.
If you are not from Texas and not used to Texas heat, it's toasty for somebody is not a born and raised Texan that moved down here. It can get pretty toasty. So yeah, like Brian said, like making sure that your attire is light and breathable, but will also protect you from the sun because the sun is very, very intense. Hats are another good thing to wear and bring along.
And layers. The mornings start out cooler.
Yes.
So I even as a natural born Texan, I'm cold in the morning. So I layer and I take off. So
and one of the other things, just based on our track record, definitely bring a rain shell and an umbrella.
Yes.
We make it rain.
We do. We do.
It did not rain last year though. So it was our first year without rain. So we're starting a new tradition. If you are going on the Devil's River trip, especially the North Unit, we recommend bringing water shoes to cross the river in and kind of preparing for that. I go barefoot. Some people don't advise that, but I go barefoot. Most people wear water shoes, but we hike across the river. So is Fort Clark's...
Go ahead. I will say with water shoes, we don't recommend flip-flops because the water does tend to flow fast and there's a good chance that you might lose your flip-flop downstream. So something that actually like straps, like more like a sandal type water shoe or a slip-on water shoe is what we would recommend for that.
Is Fort Clark Springs normally closed to the public? Brian.
It's one of those things where it depends on the current status of things there. I think I don't know. I honestly don't know what the current situation is, because my parents still live there. So when I visit, I always check in as I'm visiting them.
We always get permission to go, and are guest of the fort. Like Brian says, it's kind of a different thing in different times. It's been different. That based upon who manages that property, the expectations on being open to the public or only being open to the guests of the fort can be a situation. Is that the best way to describe it, Brian?
I think so. I think, in most of its history, it's been, you can say I'm here to visit or I'm just here for the day, and they do let you in, but it's, not necessarily always been guaranteed.
So it looks like the last question we have in the chat right now is, do people drive their own ATVs or are they large ones?
So at Dobbs.
Dobbs. Mm-hmm.
So at Dobbs, that's the only site that utilizes ATVs, and that the landowner graciously allows us to use theirs. And they are large ATVs that are driven by staff. So staff, ranch managers drive those ATVs on the property.
So they're technically they're UTVs. So there's multiple seats. It's not a single seater. So yes, somebody that is, I hate to say qualified, but you will not be in charge of driving the UTVs if that's not, we do not let participants drive them. We'll have staff that operates those. Yes. Some great questions.
Yes. Well, and thank y'all everybody for your interest in birding the border. If you don't have any other questions, please leave us with maybe one place that you are, one trip that was intriguing to you. Even if you're not going to join us, put that in the comments. One trip that you thought you might enjoy. Liz just posted our emails in the chat. We will also send you a follow-up email with our emails, contact information, and a link to the recording if you have any questions. So thank you all so much for joining us, and happy Wednesday.